Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am officially done reading Romeo and Juliet. Those of you that do know and those of you that don't know, I have never read Romeo and Juliet before. I was never exposed to it. I did not know what the story was about. When I first heard about Romeo and Juliet, I did ask someone close to me what the story was about, and he said that it's not the right time. He'll explain to me when I'm older that Romeo and Juliet is about a girl who falls in love with a boy who doesn't love her, and she commits suicide and left it at that. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. That guy is wrong. That guy is dead wrong. And you would be correct. He did not know what Romeo and Juliet was about at all. I don't know how he knew about it. I don't know what made him come to that conclusion. But I was pulled out of several occasions learning about Romeo and Juliet. And maybe it was a good thing, maybe it was a bad thing. But I will say this tragic romance completely destroyed me. I cried for I don't know how long, but I cried for a really long time. I was angry, I was hurt. I was really, really disappointed. Not in the story itself, mind you, but I was just disappointed on how everything just played out. But before I get into that, let me introduce you to my book. So, this is the complete works of William Shakespeare. It is a special edition from Barnes & Noble. It's a really, really pretty leather-bound book. And when I first got this book, I wasn't quite sure if it did have Romeo and Juliet. Even though it said the complete works, I didn't want to assume that it did or didn't have it. So I asked Google, I asked Grok, and I asked one of the employees at Barnes & Noble, and I asked them if this had Romeo and Juliet. And they said yes, or that it should. So I'm like, okay. And the reason why I say that that I did not know is because when I first picked up this book, it was covered in plastic. I couldn't open the book. I couldn't see what was in it. I couldn't see like what stories it had. But I got the book. It cost $30. It's honestly reasonable for the book itself because of the cover, because of what it had, and how well beautifully designed and how many stories there were. There's about 30 stories in here. I especially am obsessed with this opening page of William Shakespeare. It's just really pretty. But yeah, Romeo and Juliet is right there on page 245. Now, the only play I read of William Shakespeare is Macbeth. As you can see, Macbeth is right there. That's the only one I read, was Macbeth. Romeo and Juliet, never heard of it, never knew what it was about. When I was first introduced to Romeo and Juliet, it was by Ballet West. Now, Ballet West is just dancing and music. No lyrics, it's just very instrumental, very just seeing people ballet. And even as I was watching the ballet, I didn't really quite understand what was happening. So I was very confused. I didn't really get the emotions. I didn't really get the feel. I just sat there and just enjoyed the music, basically. But when I was recommended to read Romeo and Juliet, I was like, okay, I'll read Romeo and Juliet. So, Romeo and Juliet has been around for a really, really long time, so I'm not really going to care about spoiling this too much, because some of us that are in high school or in middle school will learn about Romeo and Juliet. Maybe not middle school, maybe that's a little too young, but definitely high school. High school, you will learn about it. So, in a sense, you are started off with two families. You have the Capulet and you have Romeo's family. I'm not gonna say Romeo's last name just because I don't want to butcher it, and I feel like I already butchered Juliet's family. So when you hear me talk about them, I'm just gonna say Romeo's family and Juliet's family. So Romeo and Juliet's family, they hate each other. They this basically this war that they had between them started from way back before Romeo and Juliet were ever introduced. But basically, you are introduced to Samson and Gregory. Samson and Gregory work for Juliet's family. They're servants. And they're out and about, they're out on the town, and they see Abraham and Benvolio. Benvolio and Abraham, they work for Romeo's family, and they start to create Samson and Gregory, they want to start a fight with Abraham and Benvolio. It doesn't really go anywhere. Somebody steps in and tells them, like, we're not gonna have that here, we're not gonna have that here, so move on with your life, right? And so they end up moving on, and then you are introduced to Romeo. Romeo had his heart broken by a girl named Rosalind, and he's just very sad. He's hurt by it, and his cousin's telling him, like, hey, why are you so sad? Like, let's go, you know what, I heard that there's a party, let's go to the party. And Romeo goes, I don't want to go to a party, I want to just stay here and be in my feelings. I am a sad boy. So so he's basically stuck in his feelings until his cousin convinced him to go to a party. And his cousin's talking about the women that are going to be at the party and how it will take his mind off of Rosalind. So Romeo's like, okay, whatever, sure. Like, I'll go with you, but I'm not really going to enjoy it. So then they go to the party, and it's at Juliet's family's house. So while he's at Juliet's house, he's standing in a corner. He's just minding his own business until he sees Juliet, and Juliet sees him. Now, they are wearing masks. It's a masquerade ball. So they don't know each other. They don't see each other. They don't know who each other is. But as Juliet comes into frame, Romeo ends up going towards Juliet. And Romeo ends up having a conversation with Juliet. They start having a heart-to-heart moment, saying that, you know, sometimes families are helpful and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they just ruin the most beautiful thing in life. But yeah, they ended up just having a deep moment. But then, as the night goes on, Tybalt sees Romeo. He knows who he is. He knows how he walks. He knows how he talks. So he comes in and he tells Juliet's father, and he says, hey, there's Romeo. He's from so-and-so's family. Like, we need to kick him out. His father looks at Romeo and goes, no, I'm not going to kick him out. He's not doing anything. Obviously, he was invited to come here. So if he didn't want to come here, he didn't have to come here. He doesn't seem like the kind of boy who would start a fight out of nowhere. So I'm not really going to be upset that he's here, because there's no point. Now, if he does do something inside my home, then yeah, I'm gonna take care of it. So Tybalt's upset, and Juliet's father says, you know what, you need to go get out, you need to go cool off, like, go away. And Tybalt sees Romeo, and he just has, like, a grudge over him, which makes sense, because, like I said, they had this giant feud. But in the father's point of view, he basically told Tybalt that even though he is his enemy's son, he's not going to treat them like the enemy because they're just kids. They weren't there when the feud started. They know nothing about it. So why should I blame them? It's not like he's going to blame my daughter and I'm not going to blame his son. There's no point. It's stupid. So, anyways, after the party, Romeo is told by his cousin and his friend, like, hey, we need to leave. We need to head out. Like, it's late. We got to go home. Your mom and your dad are going to be worried. And Romeo doesn't want to go home. He's like, no. I want to stay. And they're like, no. We got to go. So they ended up leaving. And, not sure who tells him what, but I think it was his cousin. His cousin tells him, like, hey, just so you know, we were at Juliet's house. And he's like, we were at my dad's enemy's house. They're like, yeah. And he goes, so the girl I was talking to, who was that? They're like, dude, that was Juliet. You were talking to Juliet. No, I wasn't. Yeah, you were. No, I wasn't. Yeah, dude, you were. Was I? Really? Really? That was her? She was the most beautiful girl I've ever met. And I danced with her. I enjoyed her. And they're like, yeah, but now you can't have her, so now we gotta go. And basically, Romeo runs off. His cousin and his friend are calling for him, but he ignores them. He just runs off. And they're like, all right, dude, we'll see you later. You just enjoy yourself. We're leaving. We don't know. We're not gonna look for you. You're a grown man. Take care of yourself. And as he's walking around Juliet's house, he ends up seeing one of the lights on in one of the rooms, and he's like, oh, why is this light on? What's going on over here? And he walks towards the balcony, and there's Juliet. She's going, Romeo, oh Romeo. She's not really talking to anybody. She's just talking to the knight, standing over a balcony. And she goes, what is it a name? Why is it that I have to be so-and-so, and why is it that you have to be so-and-so? Why can't we just be under a different name that had no grief, no pain, and we can just live life without feeling like we are being tied down to a family. And Romeo hears this. He looks at Juliet and goes, hey, I agree with you. And she's like, how long were you standing there? He goes, I was standing here not too long. I just heard that last part. She goes, no, you didn't. He's like, no, I didn't. And so they have a long conversation to where Romeo basically proposes to her. And Juliet just says, sure, let's do it. I like you, you like me. We can love each other till the end of time. So Romeo tells her, meet me at the church at this time and we'll get married tomorrow in private. And she goes, sounds great. We'll meet tomorrow in private. So they end up getting married in private to where Romeo meets up with his cousin and his friend, and he meets them like at a bar after he married Juliet. And his cousin and his friend basically asked him, like, hey, where were you after the party? Like, we couldn't find you. Are you okay? What ended up happening? And Romeo just looks at him and goes, I'm married. They're like, what? He goes, I'm married. And no, you're not. I'm married. Dude, you just had a fit over Rosalind. How are you already married? Did you marry Rosalind? Did you do something to her? No, I fell in love with the girl at the party. They're like, hold up. You're not saying what I think you're saying, are you? Yeah, no. Well, it depends. What do you mean? Them. Dude, did you marry Juliet? Was I not supposed to? Dude, you're so screwed. Why would you marry Juliet? Out of everybody in this entire kingdom, you decide to marry Juliet. You do realize her parents don't like your parents. What made you think that you could do that? And this is where I love Romeo, because he basically tells them, to me, it doesn't matter if they have a feud between them. What matters is that I love the girl who is supposed to be my enemy. She is beautiful, she's smart, she's kind, she's radiant, and I would do anything to protect her. So in my mind, I thought, if I marry this girl, it will solve the feud between our families. Our families will no longer hate each other. They will come to love each other to where they can accept our marriage. And his cousin and his friend, they basically lift their drinks and they're like, "Cheers for Romeo. Congrats, dude. We hope for the best." In that same scene, Tribble comes in and he basically starts a fight with Romeo, his cousin, and his friend, to where Romeo's cousin dies and then Tribble's dies because Romeo's friend killed him. Now, when his cousin died, his cousin was angry. His cousin was hurt. He basically cursed out at Romeo and basically said that he curses him. And he curses his marriage, to where Romeo just takes it as like, oh, he's just saying that because he's hurt, he's angry. Like, I get it. I messed up, but at the same time, I still love you. And his cousin says, I love you too, but I hate you. I hate you. So, after that whole scene, Romeo basically is in hiding. He's in hiding, and then Juliet gets told the news that her cousin dies, and she's not really upset about it. She's like, my cousin? What does my cousin have to do? Where's my husband? My husband was supposed to be here. Like, I don't know where my husband is. We're supposed to tell my husband about, yeah, I was supposed to find my husband. Like, my husband's supposed to be here. Her nurse basically tells her, like, oh, well, your husband's dead, and then she's crying, but she's not really crying, because of her cousin dying. She's upset because her nurse says that Paris's brother, basically convicted Romeo of murder for something that he did not do. There were witnesses that said that Romeo didn't kill anybody. He was there to try and defuse the situation. But he couldn't do it. His cousin died, then Tribble died, and now he's being accused for a murder that he did not commit. Juliet is given a choice to either come forward with her marriage about Romeo, or she has to marry Paris. She basically tells her parents that she doesn't want to marry Paris. Her parents know nothing about Romeo and Juliet's marriage. The only ones that know is her nurse and the priest. So when Juliet is heartbroken and pretending to be upset about her cousin, but in reality she's not, her mom basically tells her that she has to marry Paris, and Juliet says, I would rather marry a criminal than marry him, which again she's hinting that she married Romeo, but her mom's looking at her being as dramatic. And Juliet basically says, thank you, but no thank you, I don't want to marry him. And she basically says, you can tell my dad. She goes, okay, well, I'm going to go tell your dad. Well, she doesn't say that. I wish she did, but she basically says, you can tell him yourself. He's right. He's coming right down to your room to hear about your news in person. Julia and her dad have a falling out. The dad basically tells her if she doesn't marry Paris, that he's going to disown her and put her out in the street. And the mom basically says the same thing. So Juliet tells her nurse, I'm going to go see father. I'm going to go see priest. And we'll come up with a plan. I would much rather take a knife to my heart than marry Paris. So she ends up going to the church. Paris is there. And Paris is told by his family and her parents that they're going to get married on Thursday. And so Paris is at the church telling the priest, like, hey, I'm told I'm going to be marrying Juliet on Thursday. And so I'm just here to let you know, like, that's what's happening, even though it's a little too soon. So yeah. But as he's having that conversation with the priest, Juliet comes in and she basically looks at Paris, and she's being sarcastic, she's being witty, but he doesn't understand that, to where she's just very grumpy with him, which makes sense because she doesn't know anything about him, and he knows nothing about her other than her family is wealthy and is a noblewoman, but it doesn't matter to her. She doesn't have a connection with him. So she tells the priest, my husband is convicted for murder, and I would like to repent for my sins. And he's like, okay, cool, come on in. Romeo's with the priest. He's crying. He's upset. The priest basically tells Romeo and Juliet that they have a few options. And their main option is to consummate their marriage and then tell their parents about the marriage. Like, that's the only way out of this situation. So Romeo and Juliet, they had that plan in mind. They consummated their marriage. Obviously not in front of the priest, but they went back to Juliet's house and room, consummated, and then the next day, as she was gonna go tell her parents about Romeo, they basically tell her, by the way, you're gonna get married to Paris today. And she basically threw a fit. She went to the priest again, to show that she was gonna go do something. So she went to the priest. At this point, Romeo was gone. I don't know where he went. He's gone. And she left her room to go talk to the priest. She talked to the priest, and she said, they want me to marry Paris soon. I don't want to marry Paris. Can't we just figure something else out? And the priest basically tells her there is another option, but it's a little more risky, but I'm pretty sure everything will go to plan. I'm going to give you this sleeping draft, and you're going to drink said sleeping draft, and it's going to put you to sleep for 2 days. So basically, you're going to miss your marriage with Paris. And I'll send word to Romeo telling him that you're dead, but you're not. I'll send my message as swiftly as possible, so that way he knows, and he can come into the crypt and kidnap you and take you somewhere far away where you guys can live happily ever after. Needless to say, the plan did not work. After Juliet drinks the poison, everybody thinks she's dead. Her parents bury her, basically take her down to a crypt, and laid her there. Paris is at her crypt, putting down flowers, basically telling her promises that I'm going to take care of your grave, I'm going to take care of your flowers. He sees a light coming from the distance, and he doesn't know what that is, so he follows it. And he follows the light down to the crypt, and he sees Romeo. And he's basically has a fight with Romeo, saying that he's a murderer, that the whole reason why Juliet is dead is because of a heartbreak because of her cousin. And Romeo tells him that's not the case. She wouldn't do that. She loved me, I loved her, and they just have a full-on fight and battle, to where Paris dies. And then the reason why Romeo is in the crypt is because he is told by a friend of his that Juliet is dead, and he doesn't believe it. So he comes to where the crypt is, And that's where he finds Paris, or Paris finds him. They have a fight down in the crypt. Romeo didn't believe that Juliet was dead, so before he came to the crypt, he bought a poison. And he made a promise that if she is dead, that he was going to drink it. Juliet isn't dead yet. She's just sleeping. She's slowly waking up, but she doesn't recall anything. Romeo drinks the poison and he falls asleep right on top of her. Juliet wakes up, the priest shows up, and he's heartbroken. He tells Juliet that this wasn't supposed to happen, that the note or the letter that he sent to Romeo never went because one of his friends that he sent the letter to was stopped in another town because of an infection. To where he hears other people coming down to her crypt, and he basically tells Juliet, like, hey, come with me. I'll take you somewhere where you can be a nun and you can live your happy days there. She basically tells the priest, what are happy days without Romeo? There's no happy days without him. And she basically kisses Romeo on the lips, thinking that the poison that he drank would go into her, but she wasn't quite sure if it worked or not. She grabbed one of the knives from Romeo and stabbed herself. Because life was pointless without her husband. Towards the end of the play, Paris's brother comes down to the crypt and he sees the priest, and he raises the alarm to basically arrest people that were there. And he is told the story from 3 different people, and the priest basically tells him that it's his fault. He takes the blame for everything that has happened. It was not supposed to happen that way, and that he takes the blame for everything. And basically, yeah. Paris's brother, the prince, he says, he looks at both the families and says, I blame you. I blame your feud for killing your kids. You had a beautiful girl, an only child, who has yet to live life to the fullest, and you took that away from her because of your selfishness and your pride, and you lost the son in the process. If you just would have set your differences aside, both your children are both still alive today. And in the end, Juliet's family basically tells Romeo's family that Romeo will be buried with Juliet. Romeo's family tells Juliet's family that Juliet will be made as a statue in her honor. Not quite sure what they said about Paris, because Paris was just there. The prince was even more upset about his cousin, because he basically said that his cousin would have loved Juliet just as much as Romeo would, but your selfishness and your pride killed all 3 of them. They didn't deserve that. She was young, you know. She was 14, 12, 14. I think she was... I was a little confused when I was reading this, because at first I thought it said she was 12, and then it said she was 14, so I had to reread Romeo and Juliet. I finished it earlier during the day, so I had to reread it on my phone, the translation of Romeo and Juliet, but Juliet was 14. She was 14. Romeo was 16, 18. It never really specified his age. But this story, this play, it broke me completely. I think I'm going to have to take a break from William Shakespeare. Not in a bad way. It's just, I'm emotional. This play was really emotional. I would like to thank my friends and family to recommend me Romeo and Juliet. I'm going to read more of William Shakespeare, but I think I will have to do it in a span of like a couple days apart. I'm currently going to be reading another, the second book too, Caraval, and you'll see a video on that one when I finish it. So, with that being said, thank you, William Shakespeare, for an amazing play. Sorry I called it a book. But yeah, if you like tragic romance, I would recommend Romeo and Juliet. And I will let you know if I'm going to read any more of William Shakespeare's plays or poems. Have a good night. I'll see you guys on the next one.